Hi, welcome to Cut Both Ways.
Welcome back to Cut Both Ways. Today we're going to be talking about The Witcher Season 2.
Yep.
There are basically no spoilers except for a minor spoiler for a plot in the second Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire, the old
Was
Sam
it the
Raimi.
second one or the third one?
It's the second one.
Oh, all right. Cool.
Yeah. Other than that, major spoilers for The Witcher Season 1 and 2, obviously, and enjoy.
Yep.
So we're talking about The Witcher Season 2 today, and probably a bit of Season 1 as well.
Yeah, well, I watched season 1 in preparation for watching season 2.
Yes, because you had never seen it before.
No, okay, so I saw a little bit of the first episode with my mom and brother, but I fell asleep sometime in the middle of episode 1. I woke up sometime when Geralt was in a tub, and I was like, what's even going on right now? And then I rolled over and went back to sleep, and then I slept through the rest of it. They binge watched it one night.
Yeah, that's how most people did it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the show was awesome. Season 1 was so good. I think season 1, I might say, is like one of my favorite like shows or even like things of all time. Like season 1 to me is so good.
I mean, sure, I guess. No, it's true. It's well done, for sure. It's very well executed. I just am not as enamored by it as the rest of the world, I guess. I don't know. I liked it. I didn't dislike it.
Yeah. I think the like combat in it was like so interesting, like the way they like shot their fight scenes and the like world that they live in and stuff like that. And I played a little bit of the Witcher game, just the third one, and I've never read any of the books. And I think I probably wouldn't be really interested in the books because the books are more about like the folklore of it than they are the like fantasy adventure part of it.
Yeah, maybe I should pick up the books then, because I agree. I thought the world was great. I don't particularly care about fight scenes, so to me they had not really that much impact. Yeah, I mean, this is just true. Whenever I'm consuming media, I can appreciate something that's well choreographed, but it doesn't make, like, it won't elevate a good show to a great show for me, which I think it would for you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just think that in these sorts of settings, like you could do a show in the sort of setting of like fantasy adventure and not have action in it, but I just think that like the action is what I'm there for because otherwise it's just a like historical show. Like even there was this movie called The King or just King that came out kind of recently, and it was trying to be very historical and it was trying to be very like you know the armor was actually representative of how the armor looked back then, the politics of it and stuff like that. But the best part of that movie was the like action because it was cool. It was very like historical. And this show, you know, isn't historical, but I just think there's something about like, you know, swords and sorcery that like leads to good action.
Yeah, I guess, I'll take your word for it. I think the action was nice. I think it was very clean, well done. But I didn't particularly care if it wasn't there, if it was cut from the show. It wouldn't change my opinion of the show.
I don't know. I think it's imperative because it's like the three main characters are like one character is running away from a war, so therefore like you have to have a little bit of action for the war to be a thing. One character is a monster hunter, and it's like you know he's all about like fighting swords, and like monster hunter is sort of quotation marks because that's sort of what I think one of the main themes of the show is that though there are these supernatural monsters in the world, the real monsters are the people. And then the third character is a fucking wizard who like, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good show. Do I care that it has fights in it? Not really. They're not really my, in fact, you know what? I'm a little grossed out by graphic depictions of violence, so I definitely think I was like more grossed out by the fights than interested in watching them.
So I think that was true with season 2. I think season 2, I'm gonna like sort of dive into what mainly I want to talk about. Season 1 might be my favorite thing like of ever. Like I like it more than the Lord of the Rings in some ways. Season 2 was stupid and bad, and I hated it.
Wow, that's so sad. I'm so sorry.
It was boring. There was no like one fight scene that I can think of that I'm like, oh yeah, that fight scene was so cool. And in season one, literally in the first episode, they have like one of my favorite fight scenes of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and like, I mean, maybe I went into this with too high of expectations because of how much I liked season one, but season two was just like boring, drawn out. Nothing interesting happened. In fact, nothing happened in my mind.
Mm. Yeah, to be honest with you, I didn't notice the difference between the fight scenes in season 1 and 2, so sure, I guess that's true, but I definitely noticed the difference in sort of tone, I guess.
Yeah.
Season 2 felt to me very much like YA, like
Yeah, like young
good,
adult,
like
like
yeah, good young adult for sure, but
mm,
like young adult.
at some points it felt like that because it definitely like geared more towards Siri sort of coming into her own as this like empowered protagonist instead of just running away and being like, "Oh no." But it really felt like they tried to get these plot points out that I don't know whether they were part of the book or whether they really just wanted these plot points to happen,
Mm-hmm.
but they're just ping-ponging all around the place and I don't know like where they are. I don't know what these places that they're going are. I don't know how they're going to like tie into the overarching story and then they leave them before you ever feel like connected to that space. Like
Mm-hmm.
Kaer Morhen, the like Witcher facility, I don't know, the Witcher like hideout is probably the one place you spend the most time with and I know the like lab and
Training grounds.
the training ground. Well, the lab, the like feast hall, and the
The
training
feast house
grounds.
and the training grounds, yeah. Um, yeah, I think there was a lot of wasted time in those scenes where they have sort of like training montages for Siri at some points, and um, like that's just a waste of time. That's why it feels like YA, because in a YA setting, those are important scenes, right? Because that's your character, that's the character who you're focusing on, who you're building the main plot around, and you want to spend time with them training. Um, But in regular fantasy, it really isn't necessary to mention training more than once, just so that you know that it's happening.
Yeah.
But then you need to move on.
Or it needs to be about the training. You really need to feel the progression of the training. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel that in this. Like, they didn't have her, like, they had her on the training ground running through and getting, like, bonked by
Mm-hmm.
the like, swinging pillar. And they had that one scene where she, like, picks up a wooden sword and slowly goes through, like, fight stances with Geralt. But then after that, it's like you get that one scene where she nearly finishes and that's it. Like she nearly finishes the obstacle
Mm-hmm.
course.
Right.
If the show was more about her learning these different techniques, I think it would have been better. Or if they had just like had a very small scene of her training and then cut to like 5 years in the future, she is now trained.
Yeah,
Either
that's what I
either
would have
one would have
wanted.
been better. Yeah.
I would have wanted the second because I think there are a lot more interesting things that you can focus on than a
Yeah,
teenager training.
it's true. If you wanted to like drag it out, if you were like sure you're gonna like get like 10 seasons out of this, sure, have a whole season of her training.
Sure, but
But we don't know how long these characters are gonna want, or these actors are gonna want to portray these characters. Like I mean, the girl that plays Siri is like what, like probably 20 years old. I'll look it up how old she is, but she's definitely at that age where she's
mm-hmm.
gonna start looking very different in the next few years
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because she's gonna become an adult.
Yeah. And so I guess what would have been smart is to have recorded her um, a little bit at the age that she was training
Mm-hmm.
at Kaer Morhen, and then in this season aged her up a little bit, so that she's a little bit older, like so that her look is a little bit older, so that when she
They kind
actually
of did that.
grows up a bit, it's a more seamless transition.
Yeah. She is exactly 20 years old, so she like in the next 3 years she's gonna
She's
look
gonna
very
change
different.
a
She's gonna look
lot,
a
right?
lot,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot different. I mean, like I guess because she's older than 18, she's probably gonna not look like drastically different, like enough that like makeup and effects will make her look different. But like even if you look at like I have some pictures here and I'm just gonna show you, like this is her season one. Like I can tell just based on her face. So she would have been 18 there.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is her, oops, like, okay, hold on, there we go. This is her season 2.
Mm-hmm.
And you can already see she looks way more mature just between those
Mm-hmm.
two photos. And maybe it's makeup, maybe it's just like the styling
Well,
of
yeah,
her.
a lot of it is styling.
But I definitely felt like she was much older in this season, and they didn't do what they did in season 1, where there are these drastic jumps in like time.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think Siri is supposed to be much older than she was in season 1, but she looks a lot
She
older.
looks a lot older, and I
Yeah.
think they should have gone with it instead of trying to hide it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's always a mistake.
Yeah. For me, the biggest problem that arose from this is I was invested in Siri, growing and training and becoming basically a Witcher.
Mm-hmm.
But they never showed her do anything. She's still the
Yeah.
damsel, and she's still
Yeah.
running away from everything. And she's always like, I don't want to run anymore. And then she runs. And it's like, I don't get what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like you're saying one thing. You're saying she wants to be this fighter, and then you're showing me her not doing any of that.
Yeah, and so the training montages felt like a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the like side scenes felt like a waste of time. Like when you have Isred? What's his name? Isred? He's the sorcerer guy who's Yennefer's lover.
Oh yeah, her like first lover. Yeah,
Yeah.
Eastrid, I think. Yeah.
Istrid, yeah. He's going around talking to these bookkeepers basically, and you get a lot of exposition twice that way,
Yeah.
which is just not necessary. There were scenes with the like mages council that felt unnecessary and bulky.
Yeah.
There was a lot of extra bulk to this season, which I
Yeah.
think made it feel like it was wasting time. Like the first 2 episodes are like Beauty and the Beast, essentially the like Beauty
Yeah,
and the
like
Beast.
Witcher,
whatever.
Witcher-fied Beauty and the Beast, like sad mode Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah. Which is like, why was that in there?
So
What was it doing?
for me, it was in there to show that Siri has this connection to monsters. Because it showed that like this basically vampire, like I don't remember what they call her, but she's basically a vampire. Like could have eaten her, but she was like, no, like you're like me, and then she didn't.
Yeah, I get it, but that was what, the first episode, like the whole first episode?
Basically, the first episode and a half, I think.
Episode and a half, right? That's like 1/10 of the like 1/8 of the show.
Yeah.
Do I need that to be 1/8 of the show? If you've got 8 episodes.
See, I agree with you, and I know what you're saying, that like that was a big portion of it and didn't really contribute to it. I enjoyed that more than most of the entire show.
Yeah, no, I did enjoy it. I'm just saying that the pacing had serious problems.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I think that should have been the show. It should have been trying to get to Kaer Morhen, training Ciri a little bit, and meeting monsters on the way, and showing Ciri that sometimes the monsters are just people, and sometimes the people are the monsters.
Yeah, I could get behind that.
Yeah.
And then have that training montage when you get to Kaer Morhen and have that be the end of the show. Like have her sort of graduate as Witcher.
Yeah, yeah. Or you could have done like 3 episodes of that, and then it's like we get to Kaer Morhen, and then like cut 5 years later, show
Right.
her like whatever. But the thing is, I don't think they could do that. I really think they might have been a little bit trapped with this because they're trying to follow the source material. And again, like I said, I haven't read it, so I don't know for sure, but they're trying to follow the source material, and they can't do that jump without missing so many important plot elements. But the problem that I have is they introduce the plot elements 3 or 4 times. Ciri has this mystical connection to monsters. She has elder blood, and she is, like, massive spoiler, going to cause the end of the world. They tell us those 3 facts every episode 2 or 3 times. But then they act like each time they tell it to us, it is the grand reveal of
Yeah.
she's the seed which will like sprout in flame or whatever they say. And like it would have been a cool reveal for, episode 2 or 3 when she's like just meeting Marigold and just learning how to use magic, and they're going through her like time thingy. But I feel like they should have revealed it once and then dropped it. because maybe it might be that in the book it's harder to understand what they're saying and what they're talking about. In this movie, it was obvious from the second that they like figure out that she has elder blood, like these flowers only grow where elder blood has been spilt. I think that's later in the season. There's something that happens early on. Uh, Maybe she's talking about that she knocked over that monolith. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's obvious that she is like the end of the world, quotation marks.
Um, yeah, it does feel like they tell us everything 2 or 3 times. Like
Yeah,
everything,
it
not
really
just that
does.
she's the whatever end of the world chosen child, um, but just everything. They tell us everything 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, they kind of did that in season 2 or season 1 as well, where they're like, the girl in the woods, she is your destiny. Like, you have to go to her. But it really felt like, I felt like they weren't telling us. They were telling Geralt, and Geralt was going like, no, no, I refuse. I don't have a destiny. I'm fucking just a witch or whatever. And then it's sort of like the idea is he's battered down by his life, just getting more and more fucked up the more he tries to fight against destiny.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the end of it, he's finally like, don't fuck with destiny.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't know. I think there would have been a better way to tell these plot elements. I liked the characters of the like bookstore people. I think they were quirky and kind of like interesting and weird and like intriguing, but they were just useless, and that was really upsetting to me.
Yeah, when you have space on screen, you want to be telling us something with that space all the
Mm-hmm.
time. Um, in a book, it's a very different sort of medium. You want to have these little extra things because that makes you feel more invested in the world. But when you have a TV show and it's 8 episodes long for that season,
Yeah,
you
each
need to be
episode an hour long.
you need to be doing something with every scene
Yeah,
that does multiple things, right? That has multiple facets that's advancing the plot or the story or the characters in multiple different
yeah,
ways.
or just having something cool happening.
Yeah, something that's going to make you invested. And of course, in a book, what's going to make you invested is obviously going to be something that you read, but in a show, what's going to make you invested should be either something you see or a character moment.
Yeah, and I think that like the season 2 suffered because in the book maybe they have a like paragraph. Eastard went to the scroll maker's shop and they had the like ancient tome that
Mm-hmm.
he needed to figure out that Ciri is connected
Mm-hmm.
to elder blood, and like that's a sentence.
Even if they had a whole chapter, right? This book probably has, if it were a book
I
and
think
it
their
was a
books are kind
single
of small.
chapter,
The books are like I think rather small. I'm gonna look up how many pages the
mm-hmm.
books are. You keep talking.
But sure, if you have a book and say you have 20 chapters, that's a fairly small book. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a very large book if it has 20 chapters, about 10 pages each. Even if that's a single chapter in the book, you have 19 other chapters, right? It's just a longer format. Um, with a show, you really have to edit that down, and you really have to make sure that there isn't any time that's wasted. Um, One of the things that actually bothered me the most, and this is so petty and pedantic, that it bothered me this much, is that Siri kept saying like, "Oh, my grandmother is this badass in a ball gown,"
Mm-hmm.
right? And then the moment she like becomes more of a witcher and more of a fighter, she drops her dresses and like goes with pants. And like that's fine, right? We know that women can fight in dresses or in pants. Anyone can fight in a dress. It's fine. Um, but like but then why was that in there the
Yeah.
whole time, Like why did she keep repeating that if at first chance she was just going to drop that?
Yeah, it kind of feels like the like opposite of what is it, Chekhov's gun, where it's like they plant the seed of like I can fight in a dress because my grandma fought in a dress, and then they just never like follow up on that. So the three books are 1,200 pages, so it's about like 400 pages
400
a
pages
book.
a book, which is pretty standard for a fantasy novel.
Yeah, but they look rather like small-ish. Like they don't look like huge like tomes,
It's
which
about average for a fantasy
sometimes
novel.
fantasy novels are these
Yeah,
tomes.
sometimes they can be
Like think
quite
about the
big.
Wheel of Time.
Yeah,
Like those books are
it's true.
enormous. Which that's a
Yeah,
show actually that's out right now. We should see that and compare it to this.
we
See how
should.
they're doing.
Yeah.
But I just like I don't know. I want to. I'm so invested in this world because they do a great job of showing people just like doing stuff. They never have anyone like talk about their magic power and then not do it. Like
Mm-hmm.
Stregobor like shows like they cut off the hands and then he shows that he has his hands cut off.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. I don't know. Might have been illusion. Who knows? But it always feels like there's an air of fantasy in this. There's never
Mm-hmm.
a moment where you're like, okay, this could just be like a history
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Yeah, and
Um,
the world building is really good.
yeah, I just like it when people actually do stuff. Like I
Yeah.
hate it in Lord of the Rings that Gandalf is this like powerful wizard and then he uses like two magic spells basically throughout the show and then
Yeah,
fights with a
that's
sword
true.
for the rest of it. It's like I get it, you know, that you don't want to like over rely on CG and so it would be weird if he's like shooting off fireballs while
Even in the books, the Maiar don't use magic for everything or even for very much.
yeah. This show though, like The Witcher, everyone uses magic.
Yeah.
Even Geralt
Yeah.
uses magic. And it's cool. I think that's really
Yeah,
cool.
it's really fun that magic is abundant and used abundantly,
Yeah,
you know?
it reminds me of like a D&D
Mm-hmm.
game almost, where
Yeah.
it's like at least like a high fantasy D&D game. Where it's
Yeah.
like you can just be like, "Oh, I want to like warm my hot cocoa." Do my like hand signs, now my
Yeah.
hot cocoa is warm.
Yeah. Yeah, because let's be honest, if we gave people Mage Hand in real life, they would not be doing they'd be like, bring me the remote control
Yeah.
for the TV.
You're
Like
going to
this
scratch
is
my butt.
yeah. Can you scratch that one spot in my back that like
Yeah, exactly.
can't reach? Yeah.
Yeah, and this show really feels like that. Like a lot of people just have like minor magic or they just like use the magic wherever they can.
Yeah.
But like, oh man, I was so upset that there was no big fight scene. I really like, I don't know, maybe there was and I just like wasn't interested in it. I was already like uninvested. The closest is that when they're in that like sanctuary of knowledge where they're like no
Yeah.
weapons are allowed here and then the like four guys in the fireman come to attack them and then there's a bit of a fight scene there that was okay. It was pretty cool. But it just wasn't that good. I wasn't that invested in it. It felt too
Mm-hmm.
gory as well. I definitely think this season was much more like hardcore gore. Like there was
Mm-hmm.
gore for sure in season one.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that moment that she like stabs the guy in the eye.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. Oh,
just
it
seared in my
was
brain. It's
so
so
brutal,
gross.
so gross, and like it's like it was kind of unexpected. I didn't, the tone didn't really feel like that's how it was gonna go down.
Like, why on earth would showrunners think that I, as the audience, wants to see that in graphic detail?
Well, there are lots of people that want that. I will,
Ugh.
in their defense, I definitely think that's what
Ugh.
people want. They want to see like hardcore like violence.
Why? It's gross.
It's just how it's how it is. People they want like that's what it would look like when that happened. I feel like in the book they had that moment where they say, "Oh, she stabbed him in the eye," and then they can't just like not show like they could not show it, but then a lot of people would be like, "Why do you have people getting their heads cut off and stuff? Like you might as well like show that. It'd be so
Mm.
like rad. Whoa, that's so hardcore."
Yeah, well, most people have never seen someone actually die and it shows.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, I definitely think that this season was much gorier, and it didn't feel like they prepared us for that. Like I wouldn't have minded if that was what was going to happen, but you got to give people a chance to look away. The people that don't want to see that, like have her very slowly putting the knife in the eye and have that like tense music, show it from his point of view, show it from the knife's point of view, show it from his point of view, and then cut to the side view of her, like,
Mm.
because then you're like, okay, they're actually going to do this. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
giving me the out to like look away.
Yeah. Yeah. It felt like some of that was in there for shock value, you know?
Yeah, I agree with that.
It didn't feel necessary. It's the same with like the deaths in the second season didn't feel as necessary. They have like that kid in the sewer who
Oh
starts off on
God.
his like hopeful monologue, and as soon as he does that, you're like, oh, he's gonna die. They're
Yeah.
only telling us these things because they're gonna kill him off, and they want me to feel something.
Yeah.
And it was the same way with like the like creature, the not cat in the beast's house.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what her name was.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, whatever. The beast cat who wasn't a cat.
The vampire.
Yeah, the vampire, sure. Where like they killed her off, and sure that was a lesson for Siri, but quite honestly, it was in there to manipulate our heartstrings as viewers And then, of course, there was the big death with the horse where, like, it was completely unnecessary. Like, there was no reason to kill the horse off except that animal death always gets a big um, emotional response from viewers.
Yeah.
And that's just bad, right? If a show is trying to manipulate my emotions, um, and it's that obvious about doing it, and it's that much of just there to manipulate my emotions, I'm immediately not invested anymore. I don't care now about anything that's happening because I know that they're trying to manipulate my emotions. Not only do I not care anymore about those scenes, I don't care about the rest of your scenes. Um, because I'm just contrary that way, I guess. But it's like if you went to a magic show and they explained how they're doing the tricks while they're doing them.
Yeah.
Um, it's just not going to have an impact the way that you want it to because now all of a sudden I've seen through the curtain. You've broken my immersion and you don't get it back.
Yeah. And so the biggest problem for me, and this like is what I was thinking of when I was trying to think of fight scenes. It really felt like that. I think they call it a Chernobog, the like dragon made of the stalagmites. Uh,
Mhm.
they like hyped this creature up to be this like monstrous, hard to fight
Mhm.
creature, and I was like ready for it to be okay. This is going to be the big fight of the season. That this like monster is going to
Mhm.
be like hard to fight because he's got like rock armor basically. So he's not going to be able to just like stab him. That's the thing that kills the horse, and I was like, okay, now he has an emotional investment in killing this thing.
Mhm.
He clearly has more of an emotional connection to his horses than most of his like friends.
Mhm.
And then he just jumps off a cliff and stabs him dead.
Mhm.
And I was like, that's it. You're just gonna kill it like that? That's how you're gonna kill it? Oh, okay.
Mhm.
And it was just so ungratifying for me. It was such a like waste of a cool monster.
Mhm.
And it's like the show is about these monsters basically. Uh, Whether like you include the plot or not, the sort of main thing about this sort of world is that there are these monsters that just sort of like are within society. They're so
Mhm.
close to society that we need people to kill them.
Mhm.
And I was telling you about the like show that the cartoon that they did between season 1 and 2, like very recently, called Nightmare of the Wolf, I think. And it's about Vesemir, the like
Mhm.
grizzled old witcher, when he was young. And the idea of that is that the monsters were running out, and then witchers started to make monsters, or at least the current old
Mhm.
grizzled like head witcher started to make monsters, and that's what that is about. They like have
Mhm.
to overthrow him, but then also the world finds out, and they like killed a lot of the witchers. And like I didn't ever feel like monsters were not in abundance or a big threat to the world, because the one monster they show threatening people is that vampire. They show her like, I think
Mhm.
that's like one of the first things they
Yeah.
show is that these people get killed by some flying monster, and then later it turns out to be the vampire. And she's not that big of a fight either. There's like maybe she swoops down like twice, and then he just like cuts her head off.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like, I
Yeah.
didn't
It's
feel like
not
that
much
was
of a fight.
anything Geralt himself had to do. Like, anyone with a sword, I think, could have done that.
Yeah. Maybe with a little more difficulty, but yeah, sure.
I don't know. When I like compare that to season 1 with that first monster that he fights, that weird like swamp monster,
Mhm.
that really felt like, okay, it's understandable that a witcher has to be the thing to fight that, because it holds them underwater for like 5 minutes,
Mhm.
and the witchers like don't have to breathe underwater if they like drink a certain potion or whatever,
Mhm.
or like don't have to breathe. And their heart rate is slowed so much, so any like poisons that they get hit with
Mhm.
are like not really as violently effective. I don't know. I just really felt like this show tried to make it about Siri and just like failed miserably.
Yeah, and I've said this many a time, but teenagers do not make the best messiahs.
They don't.
Um,
And I guess
they're
she's
just
kind of like
not
the
that
opposite.
interesting.
She's like the opposite of a messiah. She's not there to
Sure,
like
I
save
mean,
the world. She's
whatever.
there to destroy it.
Prophecy, chosen one, whatever.
Yeah.
You know? And that is because teenagers are not that interesting. Sad but true.
Sad but true. Series a little bit interesting. I think the actor, or yeah, the actor does like a good job of
Yeah,
being kind of a
yeah,
like I was raised by like a warrior
sure.
queen, and I want to be like that kind of.
And this is why I say that it feels like YA. Because when you're a young adult, when you are young, when you're like, I don't know, preteen, teen, maybe even early 20s, um, people your own age or slightly younger or slightly older than you are, of course, what you want your media to focus on because you are the main character, right? You
Hmm.
want the characters to be your age so that you can relate to them more.
Yeah.
The Witcher is not, as far as I know, marketed to children.
I don't think it
Um,
is. You're right. And I feel like this is one of the few instances where I think it might do better if it was.
yeah,
You'd cut out a lot of that like unnecessary gore,
yeah, you could
and
cut
you
out
could
and you
have
could
the like
repackage it.
cheesy romance
But
between
that's
Ciri and
not,
like the other like young Witcher or something like
yeah,
that.
sure. Not Gerald. He's way too old for
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that
No.
would be so creepy. Um, but yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, it felt a little YA because you spend a lot of time looking at Siri and she's a teenager. Um, do I want my shows to focus on teenagers? No, I'm too old for that now.
Yeah, I agree with that. But like, I don't know. Season 2 was really bad. Like I'm so upset, and I'm so just like it's just set me up in a bad mood. Where like
Yeah,
now I like don't know what to do to like cleanse myself
I
of
know,
this.
it's so true. He's been moping around for the past couple of days. Every time you look at him, he looks so glum.
Cause it like we're in the middle of a huge like global crisis right now.
Yeah,
Middle like early parts still, I would think. Who knows?
yeah.
But
Hey, get your booster shots if they're available to you.
um and like it's just such a huge part of the world that it really feels like we're on pause right now. And so the fact that The Witcher is coming out, and the first season of The Witcher came out like right before the pandemic, and now the second season is coming out like mid-pandemic, it really feels like this is the only thing that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I was excited. I was very excited. Season one like felt
Mm-hmm.
like an awesome 8 hour binge when it first came out. I was like, oh cool, they're making a Witcher show. I wonder if it's going to be as good as like the video
Mm-hmm.
game that I like played briefly. Oh wow, it's like way better. And like, well, no,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's better. I haven't played enough of The Witcher to say that. But it's like you drop the ball so hard, and that inevitably feels sucky because I was very
Yeah.
invested in this. I was very motivated to see like where this goes. I was excited for this to be like my favorite
Yeah.
show of all time type thing.
Yeah, and I definitely hear you and I hear where you're coming from. I don't think they dropped the ball that hard.
I think they dropped the ball pretty hard.
Um, I definitely think that season 2 is not as good at season 1, but I think that that's because season 1 is excellent and season 2 is maybe above average
I would
as
say
far as
season one
shows
is
go.
excellent and season two is below average.
Season 2 is maybe average.
Season two reminded me of like, remember when there were those like 3 or 4 shows that all came out that kind of had the same feeling, and they crossed them over. It was like Hercules, Xena, and like there was
Oh
like another
yeah.
show that
Man,
came
I
out,
loved
Aladdin, or
those.
not Aladdin, Sinbad.
I loved those. That's the fantasy TV show of my childhood.
Yeah, and I remember liking them as a kid. I liked Xena. I didn't like the other ones. Um,
Yeah, Xena was awesome.
but it just felt like everything that happened didn't really have any connection to anything else because they were Monster of the Week
Well, yeah,
style
they were
things.
Monster of the Week. They were meant to be long-term syndicated shows.
Hmm. But they were just like cheesy and kind of like bad, and that's what this felt like. And like all of these characters, I am a little bit invested in them. Like I am a little
Mm-hmm.
bit interested in where their character story goes and what sort of like what they're going to bring to the plot. Like Eastrid is cool. I like his character. He's like the charismatic wizard.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and well, you know, uh,
Does everyone in the world have a crush on Henry Cavill except me?
yes, I think yes.
I just don't think he's very interesting. I don't think he has a lot of screen presence.
I mean, I don't know where you're getting that. I like,
I just
I
don't
think
think he's
he
interesting.
I think he has an interesting character that is this like he's trying to sort of forward that narrative that witches are unemotional and uncaring while like doing jobs for free and helping people who are like not part of his business.
Yeah, it's not the character of Geralt. I just don't think that it's like I just don't think he's very interesting in a scene.
Hmm. I think he's a good actor, and I think he like portrays looks very well. Like he's Superman, and he's the Witcher,
Yeah,
and he was in
he could definitely
Mission
be a great
Impossible and stuff.
model. Like I don't know. I don't think he has much screen presence.
Hmm. I think he does. I don't know. I don't know where you're getting that. I think, you're allowed your own opinion, but I think you're wrong.
And clearly the world agrees with you. I
Yeah.
I don't know. He's okay. I don't hate him.
If the world's telling you one thing and you're just being against it for no reason, maybe you just
It's
gotta admit
not
that
no
you're wrong.
reason. I just don't like him. I
Yeah.
just don't think he's all that interesting to watch.
Why?
He just doesn't emote a lot.
He does, though.
He really doesn't.
Like, in The Witcher show, obviously he has his moments where he doesn't emote a lot, but he does emote a lot.
He really doesn't.
I mean, we could watch through it again and I could point out all the times he's emoting to you.
Sure, you should maybe do that because
Okay.
he really doesn't.
He really does. It's mostly like grumpy and it's mostly like upset, but
Well,
that's just
grumpy
like...
is not an emotion.
Yes, it is. What? It's literally one of the 7 dwarves. um,
Oh, so sleepy's an emotion too.
yes.
And Doc?
Yes. Yeah, he definitely does. Like, obviously, grumpy is the most like thing, the common thing, but that's just like how the story is written. That's his
Yeah.
like, he's just like getting bombarded by like shit, so he's always like
Yeah.
in a bad mood.
Well, yeah. The only difference that I can see between season 1 and 2 is just the way that it's written. Right?
Yeah, they didn't do the like time skips.
It's not even that. I think it's just that season 1 is so edited down that there is not a moment wasted.
Yeah.
Everything comes together sort of perfectly, and you're left feeling very content, like you've watched something. I don't know what I'm saying. Like you come away feeling very satisfied.
Yeah, because it really felt like this puzzle that they slowly put pieces in different corners of it. And then by the end of it, when they put that final piece in, you're like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
Whereas season 1, it really felt like you had this puzzle piece and then they went like, what if this puzzle piece over here was with this puzzle piece over here? And they like put 2 characters that maybe didn't meet in season 1 together to be like, look, they're together
so
now.
in
And
season
you're like,
2, that's what you
okay.
feel like.
I don't like, this doesn't give me anything new. This
Yeah.
just gives me like, feels like weird fan fiction of like, what if Geralt and Istrid met?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't care that they meet. I like them, but them together doesn't give me any sort of new emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. So you don't come away feeling as satisfied.
Yeah.
Because everything else was just as flawless as it was in season 1, right? Like the sets.
Yeah, the sets,
Beautiful.
the wardrobes.
The wardrobe. All right. Well, yeah, no, I have bone to pick with the wardrobe.
Yeah.
Where you have Ciri's outfit later on with just that fur vest and like pants, and look, every basic teenager has that in their closet.
Yeah.
That is not a fantasy costume.
The yoga
That
pants
is a trip
with
to
the
Costco.
yoga pants with the fur vest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that too.
So no, that was a bit of a miss for me. But everything else flawless. Like the dresses that Yennefer wears, just impeccable. Oh my gosh, can I have them?
I'm
Please?
so glad that they changed the Nilfgaardian armor, and they had to like reference it a little bit, like by flashing back to season 1 or showing like characters what they were doing in season 1, and they had that like Nilfgaardian sort of like the like black armor with weird like wavy lines on it, but it looked so stupid. That armor, the second I saw that armor, I was like, these look like the like putty patrol from Power Rangers. The like, what are they called? The like enemy like goo monsters that they like, that she makes out of like soil. And like, it was so bad. And then they did a new armor set in season 2 that was much more like traditional armor looking, but it wasn't that Nilfgaardian black that they sort of talk about, that they have this black armor that looks like a sea of darkness sort of
Mhm.
sweeping over the world. And I liked that as a sort of like
Mhm.
narrative. And it's kind of this like burnished brass
Mhm.
kind of look, which and it looks
Yeah.
cool-ish, but I definitely think they could have done something better. Like I have looked
Yeah.
at armor sets that are black armor sets and been like, that is cool.
Yeah, and I would have liked to spend more time with the elves too. I think it's season 2.
Yeah, I think season 2 should have been more about the elves. Like I think season 2 could have done well to have had Philivandril be more of a character. He
Mhm.
really felt like he was there, but he was
Yeah.
just kind of like swaying in and out of scenes. Like he
Yeah.
wasn't like fully a part of the
I
scene.
really like Dara as well.
Yeah, I liked him,
Um,
but it felt like that same thing where like, what if this character met this
yeah,
character?
no, exactly. And I wouldn't want that, but I'm saying like in general, I think taking some of that time we spent focusing on just useless things like series training,
Mm-hmm.
and focusing more on like the wider political arena in this world would have been cool. And not
Yeah.
even the wider political arena, because that's not really what I want. I would have wanted a B plot with an elf who we go through all of this loss with, of like losing their family and like being now in this war, and like what it means on a more personal level.
Yeah, especially with the like first elf born in like 1,000 years or whatever thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like Darrow could have been that character. They didn't really show
That's
him.
exactly what I was getting at. Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't really show him like in his moments of grief, like when he talks about how like I lost my whole family and
Yeah,
watched them like
exactly.
slaughtered in front of me, but we don't really like see that. And maybe they could have done a flashback and shown it, or they could have had him like meet someone that he like knew from before as an elf,
Mm-hmm.
like when he like reconvenes with the elves and someone's like, I remember your
Mm-hmm.
parents, Darrow, and he's like, oh yeah, I remember you, and then like have them have a moment where they talk about like the how great his parents were.
Yeah.
And so to like, so we feel the emotional impact they had like on the
Yeah,
wider world.
exactly.
That way you don't have to flash back to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was set up to be a really interesting character, and they did a really good job of having him be believable, and that he like he's set up to be like, we want you to like spy for us
Mm-hmm.
on Nilfgaard, I guess. Like the
Mm-hmm.
Redanians hire him. I don't remember who hires him. Oh, Dijkstra hires
Dijkstra,
him.
yeah.
That's another character that like completely fucking useless. I remember him in the video game. Like I remember I met him in the video game, and he's just like kind of just this like political like goon.
Mm-hmm.
Like he just sort of like, he isn't quite a lord. Like maybe he's a lord, but he isn't quite like one of the major players. But he has so much political influence that he like is this kind of weird like, he has a finger in like every pot type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they tried to give us that feeling with him in season 2 by introducing him, but
He
he didn't.
felt ineffectual.
He felt ineffectual, and he felt like he had these schemes that he was
Mm-hmm.
trying to set up, but they just kept failing immediately. Like, oh, I'm gonna go to like the witches' council and like tell them about this child of prophecy or
Yeah.
whatever, and they're like, yeah, we already know, and it's like, oh, uh, okay, and
Yeah.
like it doesn't have the effect that he's trying to do. So I don't know exactly what went wrong there, but I just think I didn't get that feeling. And like Darrow working for him was interesting in that it had this like Game of Thrones feeling of like, we know who the bad guy is in this scenario, but the like the audience knows, but the characters don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then he flipped like very believably, being like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, like, you know, I was totally on board with this, but like I am an elf, and like the elves have a
Mm-hmm.
future now, so that
Yeah.
changes everything.
Yeah.
But then he doesn't do anything really.
Yeah, and that's why I think I would have introduced a longer B plot with Dara,
Mm-hmm.
shown him with his family, shown the sort of loss that he went through, how he got to this moment, really fleshed him out as a character,
Yeah.
because he would have made a very interesting foil to Siri as well.
Yeah, and he definitely could have been that like not quite villain, but the person that we meet later on in the story, like season 3 or 4, and like he's like, I'm against you now, Siri.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember when we met in the woods and we were kids, but now like I am against you. And
Mm-hmm.
like he kind of
Yeah,
is that,
exactly.
but I'm not really feeling that. He feels
Yeah.
more like they just folded him into the elf plot than
Well,
they
yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is a weakness going forward
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because they want us to be invested in the plight of the elves, but they haven't given us a character to focus on.
Yeah. I agree with you. Yeah. The other thing that I got super lost on was Baba Yaga or whatever she ends up
Oh
being.
yeah.
I like didn't know what was happening when they first met her. I didn't know what was happening
Yeah,
like
I
halfway through the
had no
season
idea.
when they kept like referencing her and she kept whispering into people's minds.
Hmm.
And I didn't know what was happening by the end of it. Like I got it by the end of it that like okay, she is this like she's one of the riders of the wild hunt that got like separated from her world
Hmm.
and stuck in our world, and so she's like trying to bring about the end of the world alone
Hmm.
while separated from the wild hunt who are supposed to bring about the end of the world, and then by the end of
Yeah.
it she's gotten back to her like troop.
Yeah, the problem with her is that she felt very monster of the week. Um, where like like she wasn't really that hard to get rid of.
She wasn't that hard to get rid of, but also she wasn't really a threat. Like she had this like obviously she was empowered by the like horror of the death of the child, but like I didn't get that that's what was happening.
Yeah.
I didn't get that like she had like planned this all along. Like I get that yes, that is she planned it all along, but I don't know. I didn't feel it. I didn't feel that she was this mastermind. Like
Yeah.
they don't really explore who she is, and like that's I guess a little bit on purpose, but it's like I don't know. I feel like I need to watch that introduction of her again. The like Deathless Mother, I think is what they call
Hmm.
her. She has another name. I'm gonna try and look it up. Um, but it's kind of like they're anytime they introduce her, they're like in this space, and then they kind of like flash and they're in her hut,
Hmm.
and it's like I guess that's a different like world kind of, or it's like in
Well,
their
they trapped
minds.
her in that hut, right?
They trapped her in that hut, and like it just felt too easy to get her out of that hut. Like, how has she been in there for
It
like
did feel
thousands of
very easy.
years? I feel like anyone could have easily gotten her out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. She never really felt like a threat. She just kind of felt like this, like, yes, give in to the power. And you're like,
Yeah.
but I don't really feel like you have that much power. Like, you're not really doing much.
Yeah, and they didn't really mesh her into the plot that well.
Yeah. And
So,
by the end of it, when they like finally release her, she just kind of like floats into Siri. Like there's
yeah.
no like even though they're like far away from each other, she just kind of like do, and then she's possessing Siri.
Yeah,
Like
it's
there's
true.
nothing that was
It's
connecting
true.
them at that moment that made her possess
I
her.
think it's so funny that I missed that. I like glanced down at my phone for like 5 seconds and I completely missed that scene. And then the next episode, I was like, what? What is happening?
Why is Siri killing
Why is Siri
everyone?
killing everyone? I mean, I got it like a couple of minutes into the episode. I understood what was happening, but I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, and so the other thing that like really harps on me is like witchers are these super badass warriors that are like trained to like be able to
Mm-hmm.
fight any monster, and they have these like alchemical concoctions, ethylene. Um, they have these alchemical concoctions that like basically make them superhuman. They can smell things and hear things and see things that no human could perceive. How did they not hear Siri sneaking up on them?
Yeah.
Like if someone is very slowly tiptoeing up to you late at night, you're like, that is not a person who is here for my greater good. They're not going to be like tickle tickle. Like
Yeah, exactly.
they're and like as a witcher, it's like I would imagine that you would sense that and you would be able to tell, oh,
Yeah.
someone's sneaking up on me to try and like stick a dagger in my throat.
Yeah.
So and she killed like three of them
Yeah. Just in their beds.
just in their beds. I don't really get that. It definitely felt like the witchers were way too easy to kill.
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of the like feeling that they wanted to convey, that like the witchers are very slowly dwindling out, like very slowly slash very quickly dwindling out. But it just felt way too easy to like kill a witcher.
Yeah. And you could make all the excuses of like they were in a place they felt somewhat safe and Siri is someone who they know, but Yeah, I don't know. It just feels strange.
It felt very strange. Yeah, it felt way too easy to kill witches.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they easily could have had a moment of like showing Siri doing some like magic that like dampened the sound of her feet, or like, you know, made a sound bubble around the
Or like
witchers.
maybe put them into a deeper sleep.
Exactly. Anything. Any like slight thing, and I would have totally headcanon accepted it. I
Yeah.
wouldn't even really care what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of hard to believe that three grizzled witchers taken out by a teenage girl in the middle of the night.
Yeah. And they're supposed to be like 200 or 300 years old. So like, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they definitely waste characters too, in that they wasted that kind of like they wasted that poisoned or like infected witcher that turned into like the wood monster.
Yeah.
Like
The end.
he never really did anything. Like he was a little bit sassy to Geralt, I guess, and they're like
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be these like long-term friends, and they show him like remembering him in the halls
Mm-hmm.
later on in the episode or in the season, but I never got that from the two of them. They
Mm-hmm.
felt like they hated each other. And like I
Well,
get that that's kind
yeah.
of the joke amongst witchers is, oh, I fucking hate you, you smelly piece of shit. But there's a level of playful banter that becomes just like
Yeah.
angry and mean.
Yeah, and I think that actually came across as well with how they treated Siri. It was just like, wow, you 300-year-old grown-ass man is like making fun of a little girl to feel better about himself. It's like,
Yeah, it was very weird. I definitely think they could have written that way better, like in an interesting way. Like I can't think of it right now because I'm kind of stuck in the like thinking about. I'll look up his name.
mm-hmm.
So he like becomes this ant, or not ant. It's a oh my god, I remembered it, and then because you said ant, I forgot.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
Leshen. He becomes this Leshen,
Okay.
and like they're fighting him, and he's this like massive root monster, but all he's doing is sending tentacles at them,
Mm-hmm.
and like from directions that he is not even in.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're coming from the sides and through the doors and across the like ground, but he's like up on the ceiling, and it just felt weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like it definitely felt like they choreographed this like scene and just told them, okay, just like swing your swords around, act like you're fighting like some stuff.
And we'll animate it in later.
Yeah, we'll put it in later, and like it's just like didn't like look good to me. It just looked
Yeah.
very like those shows that I'm talking about where like the monster is very clearly not there,
Yeah.
and they're just like hacking at these tentacles. And this is one thing I hate that is far beyond The Witcher, but a lot of shows do this. Is a monster that is a tentacle monster will send a tentacle at something, and then they'll cut off the tentacle as it's just about to get to them, and then the tentacle like falls dead. That's not how that works. The tentacle still lives from where you cut it off back to where the monster is.
Right.
The part you cut off, yes, dies, maybe.
Yeah.
But then that's always how it is. You cut it off and then it falls limp.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah,
like,
that's a good point. I never thought of that.
so many shows do this and it always irritates me.
It's really funny.
It's really stupid and I just don't get it. Like I get maybe you're in pain and like you recoil a little bit, but that tentacle isn't dead. That tentacle doesn't fall to the ground unusable. And also he's this huge monster that has these like, you know, claws and like poison or whatever. And he's just like hiding up on the ceiling, and then the second he comes down, they just like stab him through the heart and he's dead.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, they go to find the Leshen. They find the Leshen, and the Leshen looks cool. I like how the Leshen looked. I think he was this very like intimidating, like root sort of monster, and then he dies instantly. Another monster kills him. Why did that monster kill him? Or him, whatever. It's a root monster, doesn't have a gender.
Yeah.
Why did like this demon with this like praying mantis demon cuts into the Leshen, kills it instantly, even though they say the only way to kill the Leshen is fire through the heart.
Yeah.
And they later find out all these demons are like made of this like ash, or they like have this ash on them, so they all come from the same place. They all have this same goal of capturing Ciri. Why would this monster kill the Leshen? Why?
I don't know.
They wanted to show the like power scale. Like, oh, remember how hard the Leshen was to fight? Wah, he just one-shotted the Leshen. Now he's way
Right.
stronger.
Right. Yeah, to me, that fight scene with the Leshen had a purpose, and that purpose was to show you that even at Kaer Morhen, they're not safe,
Exactly.
right?
And
They're
then
not completely safe. And then later on, they're like just lying in their beds and teenage girl comes and kills them, and it's like,
You should know.
yeah, you should know better.
Exactly. And like, I don't know, it just like never really hit for me that any of these monsters were a threat because they like immediately kill them. Like anytime
Yeah.
they fight these monsters, there's a bit of them like struggling to fight against the monster, and then they get their one shot on the monster and kill it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like that's not a good fight scene. That's not how you do a fight scene. And it just felt really shitty. I'm just looking for the guy's name. So
Yeah, and I guess that's really the whole problem with the season 2 of The Witcher, where everything in season 1 felt like it had multiple purposes for being in a scene, and that was very interesting, and like at the end it left you feeling very satisfied. That's what's missing from season 2. Because you have scenes that are pointless. You have scenes that only mean one thing. You have scenes that mean a thing, but then it gets taken back later on. And you just don't have that layered sort of storytelling to it. And at the end, you're just not left feeling satisfied.
you're not. And by the end of it, and this is like, the end of it. So when they reveal that the Emperor is Ciri's dad, I saw that coming a mile away. And so it didn't really feel like this big reveal. And also they like made him look just way too different. I felt like in season 1 he looked interesting to me, like when he first gets changed from a hedgehog back to Eskel. That's the guy's name. Changed from a hedgehog back to a human. He had this kind of like interesting look to him. And then when he's king, he just looks kind of bland. I don't know if that's just an effect of like cleaning him up and making him look better, but I just felt like his hair looked much more natural. See, like look at this picture of him. That's how his hair naturally looks. That is how his hair was. It was a little bit curlier when he became not a hedgehog, but it looked natural. His hair, as the Emperor at the very end, looks like a wig.
It probably is.
It
There are
probably
some pretty
is.
bad wigs in The Witcher.
I don't know. I think they did. There are some, but I think they did a good
Dandelions
job.
wig.
Yeah.
And costume. Actually, what was I saying about good costumes? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It was awful.
Yeah, Dandelion. Or I don't think his name is Dandelion in
Is
the
it
show.
not?
That's just what
I
I
don't
know
know.
because I played a little bit of the game.
I don't know what his name is.
Yaskier,
Yaskier, sure.
the Sandpiper. Yeah, he looked bad. He looked really bad
He
this
looked really
season. He looked
bad.
great in season 1.
He
I thought he
did.
was very like funny and like looked like a up and coming bard.
Right. Yeah, they tried to make this sort of thing like, oh, look at him, he's kind of a rock star.
Yeah.
Oof.
Ugh.
Oof. Like, no thank you. Please take it back.
Take it back and cut his hair.
Yeah. Yeah, or you know what? Just don't put him in a wig. Like, his hair is fine.
It might have not been a wig, honestly. It
You
might
don't
have just
think
been
it's
the
a
way
wig?
they.
Do you think
I
it's the
don't
way
know.
they styled it?
It could be the way they
looked
styled it.
very,
It looked very fake.
It looked
Yeah.
very fake.
I 100% agree with you. And like, I think that, and maybe like, there was one other character I noticed that I was like, your hair looks like a wig. But I really feel like they do a pretty good job with it because they kind of have no choice with Geralt with his hair to like have it be a wig.
To have it be a wig. Oh
But,
man, I just
yeah.
want to get him some like conditioner and a brush.
That's the
half
point though,
time.
is he like is supposed to be this like, I've been traveling for like years and I've never had the chance to like
Yeah,
stop
I get
and,
it, but
and wash
that
myself.
is part of why the wig looks bad. Is because it's not like it's dressed that way. There are ways to make a wig look unkempt without making it look fake, and like there are ways of applying a wig that make it look a lot more real and feel a lot more real, and this was not it.
Like kind of maybe, here's a picture of him
Yeah,
with
okay,
longish
maybe it's
hair.
his hair, but they've done something really weird to it where they've put like, I don't know, a gallon of gel into it or something.
Yeah, really. They've done something to it that just made it look really bad. And it's like for characters that like have this like weird change, it really felt like it made season 1 look much better.
Yeah.
Because they maybe they tried to like show like he's grown since season 1 because it's been a few years or something. But he just looked stupid. And a lot
Yeah.
of characters that they did that with looked kind of stupid.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I
Siri
guess
as
so.
well.
Yeah. Yeah, with her
Yeah.
little
The
list.
Emperor, exactly what I'm talking about. Like season 1, he
Yeah.
looked kind of like, ooh, like who is this guy? And then season 2, he just looked like this weird, like wig
Yeah.
wearing, like straight faced
True.
white dude. And like,
You know, and now knowing what the reveal was at the end of the season, I would have liked a B plot where you see Eskel and Pavetta, like you see their romance, how they got together.
Eskel?
What's his name?
Eskel was the guy that became the Leshen.
Oh, darn. What was her father's name?
Oh, the Emperor,
Yeah.
Emir.
Emir. Whoops, sorry. Emir and Pavetta.
Yeah.
I would have liked to see more of their story. Like,
Yeah,
how
like
did they meet?
I'm not too interested in that.
Cute.
I don't really care about that. It would be cute.
It would have
And
been a cute B plot.
mm-hmm.
It would have been a lot better than some of the B plots we actually saw.
Yeah, you're right there. You are correct in that, but I also think that that wouldn't have been a B plot that would have made this more interesting. I think it just would have been something else that we saw that didn't really lead to the overarching story. Like, we already know that they love each other and that they get together and have a kid. It's like we've seen the fulfillment of their story.
Sure, but it would have been cute.
Yeah.
I think.
I think they could have done that when they were in the like mindscape of Siri, and that they showed the elf with the baby to be like, ugh. And that's when Marigold Triss finds out that like she's the seed that will sprout into flame or whatever. The other thing is I feel like Geralt is like too, like, I don't know what word to use. He's too like fatherly and withheld this season. Like in season 1, he like has sex with prostitutes and like kills people and is like, he's a character. He's a very like grumpy character. In season 2, he really just felt like dad.
Dad mode activated.
Dad mode activated, and it like got rid of a lot of his interesting character. That like when Triss is like, sleep with me tonight, basically, and he's like, no, I can't. It's like at that moment he thinks that Yennefer is dead, and
he's like grieving.
He's grieving. I get it, but like, come on, like it's just felt like kind of counter to his character. Like his whole character is this like I kill monsters. Sometimes monsters are humans or whatever, and then like he just finds joy wherever he can, like in the small moments, like having prostitutes or whatever, and they even bring back one of the prostitutes from season 1 to be like, hey, remember me? And that was kind of useless. Like I don't understand why they did that.
Yeah, it did end up feeling very nuclear family at the end when you have Yennefer as well. It's just like, yeah, that was the whole role, right? Like Yennefer was intended to be like replacement mom.
Yeah, and it's like her whole character arc is that she's trying to have a kid even though she can't.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
And it's like, oh, now you have this kid. The two people that can't have kids have a kid.
Yeah, and it's funny because you were like, oh, I don't know if Yennefer made it out alive. And I was like, she totally did. Her intended role is to be Ciri's mother. So they're not going to kill her.
I don't know. I get that that's maybe the intended role, but I think that like they could have just killed her off. Like I'm glad they didn't because I like her as a character.
I like her. I think she's the best part of this show.
I agree. She's the only character that I really like. Like really, really like. I do like a lot of the characters, but she's the only one that I'm like, oh, I fucking love Yennefer. She's so cool. And I hated that they took away her magic this season. That's such a lazy plot.
It was very lazy. And it was a very lazy way of like making her betray Geralt one more time, you know?
Yeah. I so many shows and games and movies do this where the plot is the character loses their power. The one thing that made them special. And then they like are sad, and then it's like they have to discover that, oh, my self-worth is my true power, and then they get their power back. I hate that storyline.
It's very cheesy.
It's very cheesy, and I've seen it in so many things, and I just don't want it anymore. I think it's like lazy and doesn't really send the message that they're trying to send.
Well, and that's another way where I felt like it felt very young adult, right? Because that's a common theme in young adult, but that's because, that's the sort of thing you want to tell teenagers. Oh, your self-worth is your true power.
But like anytime I see a character that like loses their power, I think the more interesting thing to do with them is have them stop being useful and to show that like cuz like you don't want to tell a kid or you don't want to tell anyone that if you don't have anything, you're still valuable just as you are. Like I get that it's very like heartwarming and meaningful, but like if there is say a war going on
Mm-hmm.
and you cannot contribute in that war
Mm-hmm.
effectively, you should not go fight in that war. You're
Mm-hmm.
just going to get yourself killed.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be like I have value because I believe in myself, therefore I should go fight in this war. It's like no, no, no.
Yeah,
Like
that's not the way wars work.
that's not the way wars work. That's not the way a lot of things work. I forgot exactly what I was just talking about. But we,
You shouldn't fight in a war if
yeah,
you're
I
not.
know, and it's
Yeah.
like war. War is like an easy example because this show is about war. But like in anything, like in real life, imagine it. Like obviously, ideal world, you can do whatever you want and find meaning and fulfillment in it.
Sure.
But if you're gonna put yourself in danger, you need to
Mm-hmm.
know that you have the capability of
Right.
like surviving that danger.
Right. Like there are bona fide reasons why not everyone can be a firefighter, for example.
Exactly.
You
Like as
need
much as
to,
everyone like as a
yeah,
kid wants to be a
yeah,
firefighter, imagine if every firefighter was a literal child. So many people would die in fires.
yeah, exactly. Because you need to be able to lift heavy things, you need to have a certain
Yeah.
physicality, you need to have training.
It's like it's inherently a little bit ableist, but it's not like they're doing that on purpose, you know? It's
Mm-hmm.
not like they're like, "Hey, you don't have, you have a disability,
Mm-hmm.
therefore you can't be a firefighter." It's
I
like, "No,
think
no,
it's,
you can't be a firefighter because that would be a danger to the intended purpose of this job.
yeah,
A danger to yourself, a danger to your like your
yeah,
coworkers, comrades, whatever, and a danger to the people you're trying to
yeah.
save."
I think it's much more interesting when someone loses their powers and they realize that they can no longer do the things that they did in the past, but that's
Exactly.
okay because they can do other
Other
things.
things, exactly. So if Yennefer's story arc was I no longer have magic, I can contribute with
Mm-hmm.
alchemy. Like she does a little
Yeah,
bit of that at the end. I thought that was really cool.
yeah,
Like I'm still a witch. I can still
yeah.
brew a
I think that
potion.
was very cool.
That was very cool. So I'm going to tell you about a D&D story that I really liked, that I was a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this sort of encompasses what I'm talking about. My character was a warlock,
Mm-hmm.
and warlocks in D&D, they get their power from a like patron. Someone
Yeah.
gives them their power basically. When I rolled up this character, I rolled so well for my stats, and I put a lot of my points into intelligence. So I was a very smart, charismatic kind of person, because warlocks, their main stat is charisma. I eventually like lost my patron and lost my warlock powers, and they were like, basically, you're now a level 0 character. You're just basically starting over.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, do I retire this character or do I do something else? I have
Mm-hmm.
like 19 intelligence, which is like one below the
Mm-hmm.
max. Instead of doing nothing, I'm gonna be a intelligence based character. And I started being an inventor, and I started being like,
That's
okay,
very cool.
I know how to use a crossbow, so I'm gonna use a crossbow. I'm gonna try to
Mm-hmm.
modify this crossbow, and then I sort
Mm-hmm.
of turned into when I like leveled up from level 0 to
Mm-hmm.
level 1, I became an artificer
Yeah.
because my character had other things he could do.
Yeah.
He could no longer shoot magic spells out of his hands, but now he has another
That's very
thing to
cool.
contribute. And I think that was very cool. And the DM, blessed
Yeah.
them for like coming up with that as a story arc, like, and allowing it to happen. Like, it takes a good DM to do that. I think that should have been at least anytime these powerless stories
Mm-hmm.
happen, that should be the story. It's like you've lost your
Yeah.
other power. Like in one of the old Spider-Man movies, that's what happens. He begins to self-doubt and loses his power, and then he believes in himself and he gets his power back. Blah blah blah.
Yeah. And, leaning away from the fantasy, that's also just a matter of representation.
Yeah.
Because this happens every day, right? People go through things where they lose, um, like say they lose their sight or a limb, or like
Mm-hmm.
this happens to people in the real world. I think that the stories of representation of that struggle of like you can't maybe do all the things that you used to do, but you can still do things. You
Exactly.
can still learn to get around your disabilities. You can still be valuable and provide and
I think
have talent. And I think that's a matter of representation.
yeah,
And I
and I
think
think
that
that could be shown
yeah,
in a show really well.
exactly, exactly. And I want for those stories to exist because I want those people to have those stories to
Mm-hmm.
look at when they're going through those things. And it's very important. Like, it's crucial to the healing process to,
Mm-hmm.
like, figure out new ways to be.
The other thing is that doesn't necessarily have to come from a ability point of view. Like, it is also a huge part of our society, and like this is totally a weird rant that we're going on now,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like you're allowed to just be like, I no longer want to do this thing,
Mm-hmm.
and just
Yeah.
completely change what you do and focus on a different
Yeah.
aspect of your life. Like, imagine if you're like, I no longer want to be a firefighter, and you've been
Right.
a firefighter for 10 years. That shouldn't be this huge thing that suddenly you have to start from ground zero.
Right.
Like, to tell that story is fine. To be like, I've been a witcher for 100 years. I want to be a dad now.
Right. Yeah, I guess, this is a very capitalist thing,
Yeah.
to link your value to what you can
Yeah, to
provide,
what
what
you're
you
the
can
most
do.
effective at,
Yeah,
quotation marks.
exactly. And that should never be, I think, what we strive towards. I think people should just be allowed to be. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just existing is enough.
Yeah. So I'm not surprised they gave her her powers back. That was a big sort of like core element of her character. Is like, this is all
Mm-hmm.
I have.
But I hope that it isn't. I hope that it isn't all she has. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I think there's more than that there, but I don't think they're going to explore that. I don't think they could explore that in a good way. I like can't imagine them doing that in an
Yeah.
interesting way. Another thing I want to talk about is the soundtrack. I really felt like in season 1 the soundtrack was good, and like not to say the soundtrack in season 2 wasn't good, but I never had that moment where I really like felt it going along with what's happening. And I think that is my main connection to the fight scene I was talking about in
Mm-hmm.
episode 1, season 1. And the other moment that I love when Yennefer finally like unleashes her chaos and she like
Mm-hmm.
uses fire magic. There's like the song that they play for both of those scenes is just awesome. It's very like it made me feel those moments like the fight scene is kind of just like this like and it's just kind of like a jaunty-ish
Mm-hmm.
like tune to like go with the like action of it.
Mm-hmm.
But that scene with Yennefer when she like walks up on that like rock face and like launches the fire, and even like credit mostly to the actor, I think did an amazing job of like and like letting the fire out kind of.
Well, they probably hired someone for that. Scream artist.
Yeah, maybe maybe for the screen, but even just her face,
Yeah.
the way she
No,
looks, and the song that's going with it, where it's like dun 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 dun, and it's kind of this like tragic sound of like,
Yeah.
and it really shows the like immensity of what she's doing there. It like zooms out to show the fire sweeping across the forest, and I think that was like so good.
Yeah.
The moment was so cool to me. And they never really had anything like that in season 2. There's no
I can't
moment
say
where I
that
was
I
like,
noticed
oh,
the music
fuck
very
yeah.
much.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of blended into the background. But, you know, even me as a person who hadn't watched The Witcher up to that point was, like, knew that awful, like, toss a coin to
No, don't say awful. Everyone's going to like come for
Oh,
your
I know.
throat.
Everyone, don't come for me. Don't come for me. Oh my gosh. But it was so irritating. Everywhere you'd go on the internet, it was like, toss
Yeah.
a coin to your Witcher, O Valley of Plenty.
Yeah, it was a
It's
catchy
like,
tune,
ugh.
and so I get it. And they tried to do that again with when they reintroduce Jaskier, and he's like singing
Yeah.
that burn butcher burn. That's a like
Yeah.
I think that was a good song. I actually kind of liked that song, but I don't think it connected in the same way that
Yeah.
Toss a Coin to Your Witcher did.
Yeah.
I don't think
everyone
season
was
2
really-
connected in the way that season 1 did. I like everyone's saying like season 2 10 out of 10, and I
Are
think
they?
yeah, and I think that's just a like effect of like people want more of this show. That's an
Yeah.
effect of like people loved season 1 and they were just
Yeah.
like, okay, season 2, cool, whatever, give me more still.
Oh, I want more of this show.
I want more of the show.
I want to
but
see season 3.
I don't want more of season 2. I
Yeah.
want more of season 1, and so now I'm upset, and I don't know if they're going to be as good with season 3.
Oh, I hope they are.
I don't think they are.
There. Well, that's too bad. I'm just gonna have to watch you mope around the house
Yeah, for the rest of
for
time.
the rest of time.
I'll just be like, do you remember the days when The Witcher was cool?
Oh no.
I don't.
Oh no. think that's a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just gonna mope around the house some more.
Yeah, I'll mope around until something good comes along and reignites my passions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's about all we can talk about, I think.
Yeah, so tell us if you're moping around the house too. Did The Witcher 2 break your heart as well?
Yeah. Is there anything in this that you were like connecting to that made you love it as much as season one, which maybe I missed out on it. I don't know. But
Yeah. Was Yeskier's hair a wig?
was Yeskier's hair a wig? Yeah.
Yeah. Let us know.
Let us know in the comments below.
Yeah, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.